Bob Peloquin is an instructor pilot for Trike Buggies, and he and Chad were going to a fly-in down at the Salton Sea, which is south of Palm Springs, so I thought that'd be a good place to interview them. Let's see what Bob Peloquin has to say.
Well, I was a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department, a detective supervisor for 32 years. Retired out of there about 2 years ago. And 6 years before I retired from the LAPD, I discovered paragliding watching the fellows fly behind my house. I've got 3 kids, and my wife is also a paraglider pilot. The only flying I've done before this was as a passenger in helicopters and small planes and some commercial flights. But myself, I always wanted to fly, but just too expensive and too difficult to get the time to do it. As a father of 3 and full-time work, there was just no way I felt that I could justify it. But along came paragliding. I found it afforded the time and the cost was so minimal. Even with one of these motorized rigs, it's by far the cheapest way to get in the air. It's also very personal when you fly one of these because you're so in touch with your environment. You're completely and totally exposed to the elements. That's why we pick our conditions for flying very carefully. Well, this is called a paragliding trike. And so what we have is a flexi-foil trike, the same engine and frame setup that you'd have on a backpacked or back-mounted paraglider, paragliding motor, PPG. And all we've done is added a few things to give it a structural attachment to the trike, giving ourselves a nice cushy seat, throttle control. The wing attaches up through here, and you line up into the wind, hit the gas, and off you go. Wing pops up over your head, get it under control, and go flying. You don't have to run. Even when you're landing, you can land downwind in one of these things and you don't have to worry about how fast you're going. It's got nice big wheels and handles the terrain quite well. For us old guys with the backs that aren't so good anymore, I can go out and paraglide with the rest of these fellows carrying their backpack deals. It is a different type of crowd, people that are really home mechanics, very interested in building things themselves, and it's amazing what they can put together to fly. Well, I think it's beneficial to be the kind of person that likes to work on your own equipment and have some mechanical sense and have some abilities at home. It's not absolutely necessary. There's a lot of people out there that'll do the work for you and have things set up. In fact, you really want to rely on their expertise as you're putting these things together. When you're flying one of these, you get down low to the ground, you throttle up, you can soar very low altitudes, you can do touch and go. You're flying a motorized aircraft versus a one-shot deal with a glider. When we fly free flight, a lot of times we have to drive up into the mountains and you're given one opportunity for flight, and if you don't hook it up, you're done for the day. With the motor, you come down, land, go in, have lunch, go back out an hour later, take another flight. Take that sunset flight. That's one of the best times to fly one of these paragliders is the last hour of the day, just before sunset. The ground cools down and you find the air is very smooth. The reason we picked this location out here to fly is that it's, first of all, wide open. That's the most important thing. When you're flying motors, especially learning, you want wide open spaces so that you have room to get turned around and get back in and land safely. Lots of room to launch, and lots of room to land in. So that's extremely important for us. We also try to pick locations where at certain times of the day, we find that the air is very calm. Here at Salton Sea, it's usually the first several hours of the morning and all through the afternoon, say after about 3 o'clock until around sunset, we usually have calm conditions. After you have obtained the experience and you have the knowledge how to do this, you'll find that more sites open up to you. FAR 103 allows us to safely operate these aircraft without government regulation. The FAA, in essence, doesn't want to be involved with it. They want us to go out and do our thing and stay safe, so they have some rules for us. And providing we stay in those rules, don't interfere with anybody, and we operate these in a safe manner away from people, then that's going to allow us to go out and fly. Well, one of the concerns is rolling one of these over. All trikes and quads have a frame around the pilot and you're seat belted in. So I have not seen an issue yet when people have rolled it over. But if you notice, we have the throttle. It's got a kill switch right there. So the first thing you want to do is, if you're losing control, hit the kill switch, and if it rolls over, it rolls over. No big thing. People ride quads, they ride motorcycles, they fall off. You shut it down, fall over, get out, turn it back over and go. As far as the difference between flying a quad and flying a trike like I have here, I prefer the trikes. I find them comfortable. I have a little better visibility, plus I think they just look better when they're flying. The quad, the people that fly the quads love them. They do have the added stability, especially for newer pilots. As far as ground handling, they seem to be less prone to tipping over. It's just obvious that if you've got four wheels, it's harder to roll it over to the front. But I do believe with good instruction, it's a non-issue. The wing that we use is called a ram airfoil. But this wing is designed with a series of cells with the leading edge having the opening to each cell. And then there's like ports inside the wing itself. And the idea is that as you bring the wing up and then as it is flying, it fills with air. The air ramming into those open cells forces it into an airfoil shape. So you have that air in there pressing into it as you move forward. You have to always be moving forward or having air moving against the wing to keep it inflated. The technology in these wings has advanced so much in the last year, say 10 years, so that if in turbulent air you have a deflation where part of your wing collapses, the rest of the wing is providing the force inside to quickly reinflate that wing without it changing direction. In essence, a soft wing, one made of all fabric, that through the lines that are attached to the wing, control its shape and how it's brought down, and comes into what we call a riser. Riser hooks to our contact point here on the trike. Our paragliding wings are fairly advanced. They have great speed compared to the older square combat original commando wings, as they were called. We have a lot of maneuverability, we have a lot of control available to us. They've changed the opportunity for us to fly because they actually inflate, come up better and have better control. They've come quite a ways and they continue to improve every year. In the beginning of someone's flying, they're going to start out with a beginner wing, which is actually something that's going to look very boxy. It's going to have a chord width that's fairly wide to the length of the wing. It's going to be fairly flat, and you'll notice that the cells in the front are very large opening. So it's extremely easy to inflate, very stable, stays overhead quite well, has less opportunity for it to pitch or yaw. It's a very, very simple wing. Looks very square, almost boxy in appearance. As you get into more advanced wings where you get more performance, you begin to notice that the wing gets longer and the chord width gets narrower, and the cells become smaller. The openings of the cells become smaller. And what that does is it allows you to have a wing that's faster, more maneuverable, has a faster glide. So what you're looking at is the aspect ratio on the wing. A high aspect wing is extremely long and fairly narrow. A low aspect, which is the beginner's wing, is going to be shorter and have a wider chord or length as far as, or I should say, depth. One of the things that you'll come across is that the rules of FAR 103 doesn't require that you be certified. It doesn't require that you get instruction. So it could be that you think this is really simple, that this is something that you can do on your own without any training or ability. And you might be able to, but if you're wrong and you make a mistake at about 200-300 feet off the ground and you don't understand what's going on, that's a bad time to decide that you should have gone to school. You know, I hate to say it, but you can go on to eBay, buy one of these things, get a wing, and go out and try to do this. But I'm going to tell you, if you fly that way, your career will probably be very, very short-lived, like maybe one time down the runway before you destroy this piece of equipment. I get people who try to teach themselves, and the next thing I know, after their broken leg is healed, they're at our shop checking out our equipment and signing up for the full course. So yes, it is something that you can go out and do without any regulation. In fact, that's the key behind it that makes it so beautiful, is the lack of regulation, so long as we do fly it safely. Finding an instructor is probably one of the most important things you can do. And the first place to look would be the United States Power Paragliding Association. And that's on the internet. You can find information through Ultralight magazine and ultralight flying sites, paragliding sites. Find out what kind of equipment they're selling, what their store is like, what their training facility. How long are they willing to spend on your training? Are they only going to spend like one day and say that you're good to go fly? Or is it a long-term program where they're going to be involved in your full development for years to come? Those are important things to look at when you're looking at an instructor. First day I have somebody for instruction, I teach them the basics of pre-flight, weather, the conditions to fly in to start with. And then I teach them how to, first of all, launch the wing, turn while they're flying one, and then how to land. So in one day, I usually can teach somebody how to fly an aircraft. These are so simple that they provide us that opportunity. It gets a little more complicated when you throw a motor into it because you're adding other factors. You have torque, you have a blade, a propeller spinning, you've got weight on you. So it does complicate things a bit. So I would prefer to have somebody free flying first and have an understanding of how to operate a paraglider and then add the motor to it. Now, in our instruction, we spend a lot of time having the pilots just taxi up and down, learn how to control the throttle, what we call fluttering, so that they can stay balanced underneath their wing and not get crossed. It's just like any other wing. If you put the angle of attack to a point that is too high for the air to flow over the wing, it's going to create what we call a stall. The air is no longer going to flow over the wing, and you simply at that point lose all lift ability with the wing. Most of the wings that we have today, it is next to impossible to stall without the pilot making a serious effort to stall the wing by putting his hands just way too low and holding it down there for a while. If even a pumping action down and then releasing it, the wing will likely not stall, it will recover. And a lot of this has to do with the rating of the wing. If you're flying one that is a beginner wing or even an intermediate, it's going to be far harder to induce that stall or a spin situation into the wing. Well, I get asked the question quite a bit, like, why do I do this? It must be dangerous, it's expensive, aren't I taking my life in my hands every time I do it? When you're flying a paraglider or any of these light sport aircraft, it's a great opportunity to relax. First of all, you're so focused on what you're doing, or you should be, that your head is cleared of everything else. All your other daily problems, situations are forced out. And at the end of the flight, it's really almost as if you've done a meditation, cleared your head, cleared your thoughts. The motorized flying is just so much fun because you can get out there, do it for 15, 20 minutes, come in and land, sit down, chat with your buddies here. And the community is a great group of people. They're so much fun. Even when we have competitions in these activities, the competitions are such that we aren't competing against each other, we're competing against the course. Heck, it's in my thoughts 24/7 anymore. That's kind of sad, but it is addicting. Well, this is a trike buggy. They're like all trike buggies. The owners seem to do modifications on them. Primarily the modifications I did on this one was I used a lot of stainless steel, constructed it using the stainless steel parts that could be polished out. Gave it a nice fire engine look with the red engine frame and such. It just is, I think, one of the prettiest hot rods out here. Went ahead and constructed this system of mounting the motor to the frame using this piece here and to the power loops, as we call them. And the cross piece here was designed so that it uses the manufacturer's mounting points as well. What we have is a system where we use this riser attachment to give us a lower hang point directly onto the frame of the trike buggy, and that way we maintain a really nice angle while we're flying, so that as we're coming into land or when we're launching, our front wheel lifts off first, and as we're landing, our rear wheels touch the ground first. I do have a reserve parachute on both of my models, and the reserve is over here for my right arm. And all I would have to do is reach through, grab that yellow handle, pull that loose, throw the reserve out, and at that point it would deploy onto these upper hang loops at this point. That would be so that it would actually sit quite a bit higher above my regular wing. Well, the primary advantage, I'd say, of having the lower hang point is, first of all, it gives us a little more maneuverability, but the second, and probably one of the better benefits, is it allows the factory riser to be used and not adding any extension to the brake lines. We can use the factory settings on the brakes and puts them right at this location on our arms, about where you can put your fingers in your ears, and about here. You don't want your arms stretched up like this the whole time. Kind of takes away what you can give. You want them in this position, comfortable and low. That's the primary reason for moving the hang point. Well, as you can see down there, Zubafly Paragliding Simulators, that's the company that I own, and I build paragliding simulators for instructors. We manufacture them and ship them all over the world. They basically are a complicated hanger system that allows, with risers, that allows the instructor to hook up the motor, foot launch, or even one of these trikes and balance it, and gives the student an opportunity to get a feel for what's going on before they ever get in the air. And what we have here is a company called Fresh Breeze. They're a German manufacturer, and the motor is a Hertz 313cc, two-stroke, primarily built for aviation engine. Got a reduction drive on it, an electric start and a pull start, uses an electronic ignition, and we have a Bing float carburetor on it. You know, it's kind of interesting how they had to actually make this to where it sits not rigidly attached to the motor, but actually on this flexible manifold, so that the carburetor doesn't shake too much and get the fuel bubbled up. And they use a four-bladed prop. It's actually the same prop bolted together. We've got two of the same. And it may look a little strange because it's more of a closed X than perfectly symmetrical X shape. But they've actually found that this is advantageous, and you get more thrust power out of it being set this way rather than an X pattern. We also have the kind of unusual scimitar prop shape on this that's more advanced. You'll notice it's got a very large silencer, because in Germany, noise issues are extremely important over there. They do tend to build much quieter engines. And for a two-stroke paragliding motor, this one is very quiet. It's still noisy, still loud, but it's greatly reduced, and when flying at a distance off, you'll notice the quietness of it much more so than you would any other two-strokes out here. Well, we talked about inventors and being the masters of invention, pilots, people building these aircraft. Well, one of the things we don't have is a fuel gauge on these. So you just got a chance to see what our fuel level is the way we do it. Just look in the rearview mirror there off to the side and see how much gas you've got. It's really accurate.